Step into the mystical world of the Aztecs, where towering temples scraped the sky and bustling marketplaces thrived with the heartbeat of an ancient civilization. Join us on a journey back in time to uncover the secrets of a society steeped in myth, legend, and astonishing innovation. Mexico has always had a strong connection to their history, and much of the culture has stayed alive for many hundreds of years. The cultural heritage of Mexico is just as alive as the colorful traditions they keep until today. The history of the Aztecs was rich and filled with tradition. It is easy to notice on the awe-inspiring pyramids to elaborate ceremonies honoring their gods. The Aztecs painted their world with vibrant colors and rich symbolism. The Aztec culture flourished in central Mexico in the post-classic period from 1300 to 1521. The Aztec people included different ethnic groups of central Mexico, particularly those groups who spoke the Nahuatl language and who dominated large parts of Mesoamerica from the 14th to the 16th centuries. Aztec culture was organized into city-states, some of which joined to form alliances, political confederations, or empires. The Aztec Empire was a confederation of 3 city-states established in 1427. Tenochtitlan, city-state of the Mexica or Tenochca, Texcoco, and Tlacopan, previously part of the Tepanec Empire, whose dominant power was Azcapotzalco. Although the term Aztecs is often narrowly restricted to the Mexica of Tenochtitlan, it is also broadly used to refer to Nahua polities or peoples of central Mexico in the pre-Hispanic era, as well as the Spanish colonial era, 1521-1821. The definitions of Aztec and Aztecs have long been the topic of scholarly discussion ever since German scientist Alexander von Humboldt established its common usage in the early 19th century. Most ethnic groups of central Mexico in the post-classic period shared basic cultural traits of Mesoamerica, and so many of the traits that characterize Aztec culture cannot be said to be exclusive to the Aztecs. For the same reason, the notion of Aztec civilization is best understood as a particular horizon of a general Mesoamerican civilization. The culture of central Mexico includes maize cultivation, the social division between nobility and commoners, a pantheon, featuring Tezcatlipoca, Tlaloc, and Quetzalcoatl, and the calendric system of a Xiuhpohualli of 365 days intercalated with a tonal pohualli of 260 days. Particular to the Mexica of Tenochtitlan was the patron god Huitzilopochtli, twin pyramids, and the ceramic styles known as Aztec I to IV. In today's usage, the term Aztec often refers exclusively to the Mexica people of Tenochtitlan, now the location of Mexico City, situated on an island in Lake Texcoco, who refer to themselves as Mexica, a tribal designation that included the Tlatelolco, Tenochtitlan, referring only to the Mexica of Tenochtitlan, excluding Tlatelolco or Colhua, referring to their royal genealogy tying them to Culhuacan. Sometimes the term also includes the inhabitants of Tenochtitlan's 2 principal allied city-states, the Acoluas of Texcoco and the Tepanecs of Tlacopan, who together with the Mexica formed the Aztec Triple Alliance that controlled what is often known as the Aztec Empire. The usage of the term Aztec in describing the empire centered in Tenochtitlan has been criticized by Robert H. Barlow, who preferred the term Culhua Mexica, and by Pedro Carrasco, who prefers the term Tenochca Empire. Carrasco writes about the term Aztec, that it is of no use for understanding the ethnic complexity of ancient Mexico and for identifying the dominant element in the political entity we are studying. In other contexts, Aztec may refer to all the various city-states and their peoples who shared large parts of their ethnic history and cultural traits with the Mexica, Acolua, and Tepanecs, and who often also used the Nahuatl language as a lingua franca. To the Aztecs themselves, the word Aztec was not an endonym for any particular ethnic group. Rather, it was an umbrella term used to refer to several ethnic groups, not all of them Nahuatl-speaking, that claimed heritage from the mythic place of origin, Aztlan. Alexander von Humboldt originated the modern usage of Aztec in 1810 as a collective term applied to all the people linked by trade, custom, religion, and language to the Mexica state and the Triple Alliance. In 1843, with the publication of the work of William H. Prescott on the history of the conquest of Mexico, the term was adopted by most of the world, including 19th-century Mexican scholars who saw it as a way to distinguish present-day Mexicans from pre-conquest Mexicans. This usage has been the subject of debate in more recent years, but the term Aztec is still more common. From the 13th century, the Valley of Mexico was the heart of dense population and the rise of city-states. The Mexica were latecomers to the Valley of Mexico and founded the city-state of Tenochtitlan on unpromising islets in Lake Texcoco, later becoming the dominant power of the Aztec Triple Alliance or Aztec Empire. It was an empire that expanded its political hegemony far beyond the Valley of Mexico, conquering other city-states throughout Mesoamerica in the late post-classic period. It originated in 1427 as an alliance between the city-states Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan. These allied to defeat the Tepanec state of Azcapotzalco, which had previously dominated the basin of Mexico. Soon, Texcoco and Tlacopan were relegated to junior partnership in the alliance, with Tenochtitlan the dominant power. The empire extended its reach by a combination of trade and military conquest. It was never a true territorial empire controlling a territory by large military garrisons in conquered provinces, but rather dominated its client city-states, primarily by installing friendly rulers in conquered territories, by constructing marriage alliances between the ruling dynasties, and by extending an imperial ideology to its client city-states. Client city-states paid taxes, not tribute, to the Aztec emperor, the Huey Tlatoani, in an economic strategy limiting communication and trade between outlying polities, making them dependent on the imperial center for the acquisition of luxury goods. The political clout of the empire reached far south into Mesoamerica, conquering polities as far south as Chiapas and Guatemala and spanning Mesoamerica from the Pacific to the Atlantic Oceans. The empire reached its maximal extent in 1519, just prior to the arrival of a small group of Spanish conquistadors led by Hernán Cortés. Cortés allied with city-states opposed to the Mexica, particularly the Nahuatl-speaking Tlaxcalteca, as well as other central Mexican polities, including Texcoco, its former ally in the Triple Alliance. After the fall of Tenochtitlan on the 13th of August 1521 and the capture of the Emperor Cuauhtémoc, the Spanish founded Mexico City on the ruins of Tenochtitlan. From there, they proceeded with the process of conquest and incorporation of Mesoamerican peoples into the Spanish Empire. With the destruction of the superstructure of the Aztec Empire in 1521, the Spanish used the city-states on which the Aztec Empire had been built to rule the indigenous populations via their local nobles. Those nobles pledged loyalty to the Spanish crown and converted, at least nominally, to Christianity, and, in return, were recognized as nobles by the Spanish crown. Nobles acted as intermediaries to convey taxes and mobilize labor for their new overlords, facilitating the establishment of Spanish colonial rule. Aztec culture and history is primarily known through archaeological evidence found in excavations such as that of the renowned Templo Maya in Mexico City, from indigenous writings, from eyewitness accounts by Spanish conquistadors such as Cortés and Bernal Díaz del Castillo, and especially from 16th and 17th century descriptions of Aztec culture and history written by Spanish clergymen and literate Aztecs in the Spanish or Nahuatl language, such as the famous illustrated, bilingual, Spanish and Nahuatl, 12-volume Florentine Codex, created by the Franciscan friar Bernardino de Sahagún in collaboration with indigenous Aztec informants. Important for knowledge of post-conquest Nahuas was the training of indigenous scribes to write alphabetic texts in Nahuatl, mainly for local purposes under Spanish colonial rule. At its height, Aztec culture had rich and complex philosophical, mythological, and religious traditions, as well as achieving remarkable architectural and artistic accomplishments. Moctezuma, the second Xocoyotzin, is known to world history as the Aztec ruler when the Spanish invaders and their indigenous allies began their conquest of the empire in a 2-year-long campaign from 1519 to 1521. His early rule did not hint at his future fame. He succeeded to the rulership after the death of Ahuitzotl, Moctezuma Xocoyotzin. He frowns like a lord. The youngest child, who is dead as he had lived in life, but not death, was a son of Axayacatl and a war leader. He began his rule in standard fashion, conducting a coronation campaign to demonstrate his skills as a leader. He attacked the fortified city of Nopalan in Oaxaca and subjected the adjacent region to the empire. An effective warrior, Moctezuma maintained the pace of conquest set by his predecessor and subjected large areas in Guerrero, Oaxaca, Puebla, and even far south along the Pacific and Gulf coasts, conquering the province of Xoconochco in Chiapas. He also intensified the flower wars waged against Tlaxcala and Huexotzinco and secured an alliance with Cholula. He also consolidated the class structure of Aztec society by making it harder for commoners to accede to the privileged class of the Pipiltin through merit in combat. He also instituted a strict sumptuary code, limiting the types of luxury goods that could be consumed by commoners. In 1517, Moctezuma received the first news of ships with strange warriors having landed on the Gulf Coast near Xempolan, and he dispatched messengers to greet them and find out what was happening, and he ordered his subjects in the area to keep him informed of any new arrivals. In 1519, he was informed of the arrival of the Spanish fleet of Hernán Cortés, who soon marched toward Tlaxcala, where he formed an alliance with the traditional enemies of the Aztecs. On the 8th of November 1519, Moctezuma II received Cortés and his troops and Tlaxcalan allies on the causeway south of Tenochtitlan, and he invited the Spaniards to stay as his guests in Tenochtitlan. When Aztec troops destroyed a Spanish camp on the Gulf Coast, Cortés ordered Moctezuma to execute the commanders responsible for the attack, and Moctezuma complied. At this point, the power balance had shifted toward the Spaniards, who now held Moctezuma as a prisoner in his own palace. As this shift in power became clear to Moctezuma's subjects, the Spaniards became increasingly unwelcome in the capital city, and, in June 1520, hostilities broke out, culminating in the massacre in the Great Temple and a major uprising of the Mexica against the Spanish. During the fighting, Moctezuma was killed, either by the Spaniards who killed him as they fled the city or by the Mexica themselves who considered him a traitor. Cuitlahuac, a kinsman and advisor to Moctezuma, succeeded him as Tlatoani, mounting the defense of Tenochtitlan against the Spanish invaders and their indigenous allies. He ruled only 80 days, perhaps dying in a smallpox epidemic, although early sources do not give the cause. He was succeeded by Cuauhtemoc, the last independent Mexica Tlatoani, who continued the fierce defense of Tenochtitlan. The Aztecs were weakened by disease, and the Spanish enlisted tens of thousands of Indian allies, especially Tlaxcalans, for the assault on Tenochtitlan. After the siege and complete destruction of the Aztec capital, Cuauhtemoc was captured on the 13th of August 1521, marking the beginning of Spanish hegemony in central Mexico. Spaniards held Cuauhtemoc captive until he was tortured and executed on the orders of Cortés, supposedly for treason, during an ill-fated expedition to Honduras in 1525. His death marked the end of a tumultuous era in Aztec political history. After the fall of the Aztec Empire, entire Nahua communities were subject to forced labor under the encomienda system. The Aztec education system was abolished and replaced by a very limited church education, and Aztec religious practices were forcibly replaced with Catholicism.